Hey y'all, welcome to the second episode of Rearing Rambles. Um, I am going to just quickly announce that the plan now is to have Rearing Rambles episodes release at 10 a.m. on Fridays, 10 a.m. Mountain Time on Fridays. This episode's a little delayed, that's fine. It's, our first real, actual, talking about something rearing related episode. And what's going to happen is probably record it several nights in advance, and just schedule it to, show up on my YouTube channel at 10 a.m. on Fridays. So stay tuned. I think what I'm going to do is I'll have like an animal episode, then a plant episode, an animal episode, plant episode, kind of just alternating. And so, I would like to just thank people for watching, and please enjoy. Hi, folks. Alex Baranowski here, and today, on Rearing Rambles, this is episode 2, we're going to be talking about the genus Creobroter. This is Creobroter & Co., and this is Rearing Rambles. So, within the Mantodia, there is a family known as the Hymenopodidae, the true flower mantises. This family is fairly large. It's the second largest family within the Mantodia, second only to the Mantidae. This family includes a diverse array of insects that are unified mostly by a certain feature of the, I believe the metatarsals and the number of segments they have or something like that. It's not particularly important, but it's a morphological feature that separates the Hymenopodidae from other families of mantises. Over the years, the Hymenopodidae family has changed its composition with groups such as the Sibylidae being put in and the Epaphrodididae being taken out. Within the Hymenopodidae, there is a genus of flower mantis known as the Creobroter. Now, the Creobroter are an interesting group of mantises. Hailing from Asia, these insects are small, usually under 2 inches in length, and very brightly colored. It's a stereotypic flower mantis, with the adults having usually greenish forewings that have a usually have a spot in the middle with a red or a black dot circled by black, and a small spot above that towards the pronotum. However, there are some species that lack these particular features, and we're going to get into that in a little while. So, Creobroter is a genus that has some tricky things about it. As I sit here and unpin the pins that are surrounding a female Creobroter apicalis that I freeze-dried in my freezer, just as a heads up to people, I find that when you freeze-dry mantis specimens, it saves the color a lot better. And I'll show you exactly what I mean by that once I get her completely out of these pins. There we go. I'm just being very gentle as there we go. So this is a female Creobroter apicalis. So, as you can see, the forewing is a greenish color. It's got the big spot here, and then it's got the little spot here. Like many hymenopodids, it's got these very pointy eyes. It's got stripes on its forelegs. It's got stripes on the abdomen. And this is a very wonderfully preserved freeze-dried specimen. And so we'll talk a little bit about the genus Creobroter in this podcast, in this episode. So let's talk first about the taxonomic difficulty of this genus. Then we'll get into the care and rearing and my experiences with this genus. So, one of the problems with the taxonomic status of this genus that has about 20 described species is that the species descriptions are very hard to find. Some of them are in French, some are in German, things like that. And they're not always very descriptive. There are some descriptions that simply describe the coloration of the wing, and that's really it. And then there are some that go into all sorts of intimate detail. So there are some that talk about the coloration and venation of this area of the wing right here. This is called the plica prima. And it's just a region of the forewing that it's just this general area of the forewing right here. The venation of the plica prima is oftentimes a way of distinguishing a couple of very similar species. There are descriptions of species that involve the length of the forecoxa, which is this part of the foreleg, to the pronotum, which is this front part of the mantis here. Whereas other descriptions lack some of that information. The number of little spines along the forecoxa right here is also an important identification trait. Other identification traits include the coloration along the top edge of the hind wing. In Creobroter apicalis, for example, this area is a yellowy color. The camera's not picking up on it very well. Let me see if I can... you can kind of see that yellow coloration right in here. It can be a little bit difficult to see, but it's there. I can see it very plainly. And there are some descriptions that rely specifically on the size of the animal. I don't think that's a reliable character because there are going to be a lot of things that determine the exact adult size of the insect. Things like the ratio of, part A to part B might be a decent way of, describing the species and distinguishing them from each other. However, you have some issues there too. So this is Creobroter apicalis, as far as I can tell. And we're going to get into some interactions I've had with people about the taxonomic status of the genus and some other things. So let me go ahead and read to you folks the species descriptions. Oh, Jesus. Let me just see. Here we go. Yeah, so I combed the literature to get the descriptions of all 20-ish species of Creobroter. We're going to talk about a couple of problems. First, let's just read through the descriptions, and then I will tell you what some of these problems are. Creobroter apicalis. This is alphabetical. Creobroter apicalis. It is described from female specimens. The vertex has a spine. So for those of you who don't know what the vertex is, that is the area between the front, between the eyes, the compound eyes. It's on the top of the head, kind of where the antennae come out of. That's the vertex, and if there's a spine there, it can tell you, basically, there's only one species in the genus that doesn't have a spine on the vertex. The forecoxa have 14 anterior spines. The forecoxa is longer than the pronotum. The female pronotum has serrations along the side. The discoidal spot, which is that bigger spot on the forewing, is yellow. It's in the center of the hind wing, of the forewing, and has arched banding around it. So I might, actually, no, not this. Not that. I am going to, actually, it might actually be helpful. No, actually, you know what? I'm just gonna keep the camera rolling this way. But let's go over a couple of other things with our specimen here. So you can see her head here. The vertex is right here. It's this area, and you can see. Let's see if I can angle this correctly. There we go. You can see that spine on the vertex right here. So that's the vertex, that's the spine. It's kind of the area in between the antennae. Of course, I already explained what the forecoxae were. These are the forecoxae. This is where this is what they mean by the anterior spines on this edge, the top edge, if you will. This is the discoidal spot, this area. This will be the plica prima. The anal area of the hind wing is going to be this general area where the black here is. And so we will kind of just keep rolling along, and as I find new terms, I will point these things out to folks. So, back to my Creobroter. The hind wing is pink at the base. It's yellow on the costal area, which is that top area of the hind wing. The anal area and discoidal area. So the anal area is going to be the area down here, and then this is going to be the discoidal area kind of more close to where it attaches to the thorax, are brown or black. Creobroter celebensis is described from just a male specimen. The vertex has a spine. There are 13 spines on the forecoxa. The forecoxa are longer than pronotum. The male elytra has no spots or banding, so the forewing would look just totally bare, and it's green at the base, transparent at the end. Creobroter discifera is described from male and female specimens. That's good. We have a species that is, we know the male and the female. The vertex has a spine. The female pronotum is serrated at the edges. Her forecoxae are longer than the pronotum with very fine, inconspicuous dentation, so the spines at the front of that forecoxa is not going to be very visible. The elytra of the female discoidal spot is in the center of the elytra, the center of the forewing. And so there are species where, whoopsie, sorry, I'm clicking around trying to see some things. So the banding here, this black banding, can be arched or it can be parallel to each other. So that's an important characteristic. And then you see how this spot is kind of, directly in the center. There are species where this spot is actually closer up this way towards the connection point where it attaches. And so those are going to be key identification characters. The elytra of the female has the discoidal spot in the center with the edges arched. The base of the female hindwing red to the anterior edge. There's a dark brown anal area. The base of the male hindwing is pink, and the rest of the hindwing is transparent. Then we've got Creobroter episcopalis, described from a female specimen. There's a spine in the vertex. The forecoxae are the same length as the pronotum, which is unique in the genus Creobroter. The other species don't have that trait. The pronotum is notably granulated. The discoidal spot on the elytra is in the middle with arched bands. The spots at the base of the elytra have obvious angling towards the base of the wings. Then we have Creobroter fasciatus, described only from a female specimen. Spine on the vertex. Forecoxae are longer than pronotum. Discoidal spot is closer to the base of the elytra than the center, with nearly parallel banding. That's important. Then we have Creobroter fusco areatus, described only from a female specimen. Vertex has a spine. Pronotum is very smooth with serrated edges. The forecoxae are longer than the pronotum and have 18 spines on the anterior edge. That is a record number in the genus. Other species have fewer than 18 spines. The discoidal spot on the elytra is in the middle with arched banding. No red on the hind wing, but with glossy apical margins and a brown anal area. So that's a pretty distinctive species. Now let's talk about Creobroter gemmatus, and I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant about Creobroter gemmatus later, but Creobroter gemmatus is described from both male and female specimens, vertex with spine, forecoxae longer than pronotum with very obvious dentation on the anterior edge. The discoid spot on the female elytra is at the middle with arched banding. Female hindwing red at base to the anterior edge with brown anal area. The base of the male hindwing pink with the rest of the hindwing transparent. The female's plica prima has a 3-branched vein. That's going to be important in a little while. Creobroter granulocolus, described from a female specimen. The vertex has a spine, the forecoxae is longer than the pronotum, and the elytra are brown rather than green. There are only a few Creobroter species where the elytra are brown. That's going to be important. Creobroter insulatus is described from just a female specimen. The vertex has a spine, the forecoxa are longer than the pronotum. The elytra is green, with a discoidal spot in the center with arched banding. I don't know why there's no description of the hindwings in this description, but you're seeing why there are some problems here. Creobroter gianxiensis, described from a male specimen, vertex with spine, forecoxa longer than pronotum with pronounced dentition, male hindwing devoid of color. Creobroter labuni, described from a male specimen, the vertex with a spine, forcox along the pronotum. The spot is at the base of the elytra is large and orange. Creobroter laevicollis, described from female specimen, vertex with spine, forcox longer than pronotum smooth on top and along margins. Discoidal spot of elytra is yellow and closer to the base than the middle with arched banding. The hindwing is pink in the anal area, and this pink is interrupted by a smoky band. So that's a pretty distinctive species. Creobroter medanus is described from a female specimen. The vertex has a spine, with the forcox being longer than the pronotum. The elytra is brown, with a red discoidal spot in the center that has arched banding. Creobroter meligris is described from both male and female specimens. Vertex with spine, forcox longer than pronotum. The spot at the base of the elytra is large and yellow. That separates it from labuni, who has the orange. The pronotum has a transverse light yellowish band. The discoidal spot on the female elytra are closer to the base in the middle with arched banding. The discoidal spot is transparent. The male hindwing is pink at base, glossy elsewhere. The female hindwing is red at the base with a smoky color elsewhere. Then we get Creobroter nebulosa, described only from a male specimen, vertex with spine, forcox longer than pronotum, elytra green. Spot at the base of the elytra is inconspicuous. The plica prima is colorless, and the hindwing is smoky blotched in the center of the anal area. Creobroter pictopenis, described from both male and female specimens, vertex with spine, forcox longer than pronotum. The top of the pronotum is smooth, the edges are serrated. The discoidal spot of the elytra is in the center and has arched edges. Female hindwing has a distinctive green color at the base. There's a reddish band with glossy edges. Male hindwing is glossy with smoky patch in the center of the anal area. Creobroter signifer, described from a female specimen. The vertex has a spine, of course. The forcoxae are longer than the pronotum, and the elytra are brown. Creobroter sumatrenus, basically the same thing. Elytra brown, vertex without spine. So sumatrenus looks a lot like signifer, except sumatrenus doesn't have the spine on the vertex. Creobroter urbanus, oh boy. Described from both male and female specimens, the vertex has a spine, the forcox longer than pronotum, with very evident dentition on the anterior edge. Discoid spot on female elytra in the middle with arched banding. The female hindwing is red at the base to anterior edge with brown anal area. Base of male hindwing pink with the rest transparent. The plica prima of the female has two branched venation. And then Creobroter vitripennis, described from a male specimen, vertex with spine, forcox longer than pronotum, elytra green, spot at the base of the elytra inconspicuous, plica prima dark and hindwing with smoked blotch in center of anal area. So, a couple of problems with these species descriptions. The first problem is that you have some inconsistencies in what's actually being looked at. You have some species where they don't even talk about the hindwing coloration and things like that. They don't have discussion about the forcoxae. They don't have discussion in some species about what's it called? The hang on a sec. Oops. I'm just quickly going through something on here. Okay. Sorry, I just got a notification of something on my computer. Anyway, so they don't always, some of them talk really in depth about like if the pronotum has a texture or kind of any kind of side points or any, and some of them don't. And so this can make trying to identify a Creobroter species pretty tricky. Now, I was speaking with somebody who had been doing some work on describing Creobroter in different areas. And this person had told me that, hey, one thing that happened with the genus is there was a species known as Creobroter elongatus that got synonymized, or, basically they said, no, it's actually the same thing as Creobroter apicalis. And there's a person who's like, I disagree with that, and so, like, I don't really know what the status of that is. And, you know, there's obviously the possibility that these animals, there's more than 20 species to the genus. I mean, that's probably the case, which makes this even more tricky. And we're going to get into why that can be tricky for people rearing them in a little while, but trying to key out Creobroter can be kind of a messy process. So, let's talk a little bit about some species of Creobroter that are pretty distinctive. So, Creobroter apicalis, of course, the female hindwing has that yellow costal margin that we don't see in other species. Creobroter celbensis has no spots or banding on the male elytra. And of course, there's a problem because some of these species aren't described from both male and female specimens. Some of these species are described only from the males or only from the females. Creobroter piscipalis, the forecoxa is the same length as the pronotum. Fusco areatus has 18 spines on the interior of the forecoxa. Creobroter pictopenis has green on the base of the female hindwing. The only two species without the spine on the vertex are Enceladus and Sumatranus. Fasciatus and Medanus have the nearly parallel banding on the female elytra. Granulocolus, Medanus signifer, and Sumatranus have brown elytra. And then we get into a couple of groups where the species are very similar, like Creobroter gemmatus is very similar to Discifera, Gianxiensis and Urbanus, Meleagris is very similar to Labunae, and Nebulosa is very similar to Vitropenis. So I made a key that kind of first rules out, you know, like, is the forecoxa the same length as the pronotum, or if it's longer? Does the forecoxa have 18 spines or fewer? Is there a spine on the vertex? And if there's no spine on the vertex, if the elytra are brown, then you've got Sumatranus. If they're green, you've got Enceladus. And so, you know, I kind of go through and I made a key where you can kind of see all of the different, differences. You get to a couple of species with like the Vitropenis and Nebulosa vary only in the plica prima coloration of the male. Not all the species descriptions even talk about the plica prima, which is a problem. And then Gemmatus, Discifera, Gianxiensis, and Urbanus are very similar. If the male hindwing anal area has a smoky patch, if the male hindwing anal area is colorless, then you have either Gianxiensis, Discifera, Gemmatus, and Urbanus. If there's pink at the base, then it's not Gianxiensis. If the anterior edge of the forecoxa has inconspicuous teeth, it's Discifera. And then the 3-branch versus 2-branch vein on the plica prima of the female is going to tell you if it's Gemmatus or Urbanus. And so this group is kind of a hodgepodge of all sorts of things that we aren't always attuned to. And one of the problems that's happened in culture, there are a lot of misidentifications have happened in the rearing of Creobroter. So one really good example is Creobroter pictopenis occasionally shows up. But I don't think it's actually pictopenis because the adult females don't have that green on their forewing. So I'm going to quickly go on to the Mantid forum. And why don't I search Creobroter pictopenis. Now, maybe here I will show the actual screen. Okay, yeah, we're going to do that. Okay. So let's see if we have here's one we can look. Well, let's just see. Yeah, so I'm not sure from this image. Let's go back. How do I do an advanced search here? Creobroter pictopenis. Ah, okay. Okay. Let's see here. So obviously we're not going to be able to tell from a freshly molted individual. Oh, you can really see that spine on that apex right there. Oh, that's beautiful. Aw, baby. Okay, back. Let's see. Oh. You can see that spine on the apex very clearly right there. I do like that. That doesn't mean it's pictopenis. Let's see. Oh, this was me. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. Yeah, let's go back here. Let's see. Nope. I don't think that's gonna work. Back. Trying to find one that's like threat posing. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not sure on that. I need to find a picture of one that has a. I'm just gonna keep looking here. Hmm. Gee, that's a fat Creobroter I had. Okay, let's see. Let's see. I'm gonna keep looking. I don't know if we're gonna find it. Let's see. I have a better idea. Let's see. Not that one. Alright, that's not helpful. Okay, that's not even a Creobroter. Let's see what we can find on just Google Image. No, I want images. Let's see. So here's something. So like, if we were to zoom in on this, I'm not seeing any green at the base of that hind wing. I don't think that's Pictopenis. I mean, I can't really tell which Creobroter that is from that image. That's Apicalis. According to this, that's Apicalis, but it may not actually be. I don't think that's Pictopenis. Yeah, like if you look. Yeah, I'm not seeing any green at the base of that hind wing. I'm not convinced that's an Pictopenis. Doesn't look like Apicalis either. It looks more like Dramatis, but I'd have to get a really good view at the this region, and it's just not very clear right here. I can't really tell what this vein here is doing. Like specimens. Here we go. So if we go to this specimens Mantodia research website, I mean, we don't have all of them. I mean, here it lists Apicalis and elongata as different. And, you know, that's not a very good specimen to be relying on. It's faded and ripped up and, you know, definitely not a good quality specimen. Then we go to Apicalis here. Wait, no, I didn't. You know, you can kind of see the yellow there at the very top. It's very faded, though. It's very, I mean, it looks like Dermestid beetles had a feast on that thing. But what I was getting at is, where's Dramatis? Here's Dramatis. And, like, Urbanus isn't here, so we can't really compare it. Wait, that's a male. I needed the female. That's not what I needed. Here's the female. So, you can see this vein right here. And it's got 3 branches coming off of it. And so, that's how you can tell that that's Dramatis. So now if I was really, hell-bent on seeing the plica prima venation of this mantis here, I could take my jeweler's loop. So she's also got the 3 branches off of that vein. Which is, that doesn't mean this is a dramatis, it just means that apicalis also happens to have that characteristic. And so, things that, other things that would tell you that this isn't dramatis, other than just the sheer size, which again isn't necessarily the best way of determining that, would be that yellow in the costal area. Now, we do have to discuss a couple of problems. So anyway, what I was getting at with the whole, looking at the pictures of the Pictopenis is that, I can't seem to find, let me just check GBIF real quick and see if there are, any, legit Pictopenis. I'm just gonna go to the gallery on this. I know you guys can't see my screen, but that's okay. I'm not gonna spend more than a brief minute on this. I'm just trying to see if there are pictures of preserved specimens, and there don't seem to be. There are 24 images, and it's all living specimens. One of them doesn't even look like a Creobroter, but I could be wrong. No, that does look like a Creobroter. Whether or not it's Creopictopenis, I'm not entirely sure. There have been stocks of mantises that have been labeled as Creobroter pictopenis for quite a while. They come and go in the culture, and I suspect that some of them might actually be apicalis. I haven't seen a legitimate pictopenis, because if we're going by the description where there's that green on the base of the hind wing, I haven't ever seen that. And apicalis looks very similar to pictopenis, and there's a marking on the stomach, base of the pronotum area of the nymphs that's this black swirly marking that I see in the apicalis nymphs, but I don't really see in other Creobroter species nymphs. And I'm not saying that that necessarily means that everybody who has that marking is apicalis, but what I am saying is that these things that were labeled as Creobroter pictopenis may not actually be Creobroter pictopenis. Why is that a bad thing? So that's where we're going to go now. Because, and I have a kind of a story that illustrates why this is a bad thing, but the reason it's a bad thing is because when people are rearing mantises, now not only, is it important to have as accurate of a idea of what you're working with as possible. Not that the care of the different Creobroter species is all that different across the genus. They come from a relatively similar area, and some species are more widespread than others, this and that. So, I'm not saying that necessarily, if you have Pictopenis versus Dramatis versus Apicalis versus Urbanus, you're going to have a huge difference in how you're supposed to take care of it. But what I will say is that, let's say you only have, males or females of your Creobroter, and you're trying to breed them, it might be hard to actually, track down somebody who has males or females of the same species. And whether or not different species will mate with each other is another matter. I don't know. And the other thing I want to caution people about is, because the species descriptions are so wishy-washy and, there's still a lot that hasn't been learned, you want to be careful attributing, everything that we know right now to your insect to say, like, oh, this is definitely whatever, because there could be other species we haven't described yet. And, you know, I think DNA might be the only way to actually resolve this whole issue. But, actually, just a second. Alright, let's see here. I did actually receive images. No, let's see. Open. Aha. That's a really dark picture. Yeah, I don't like that. Here we go. So, let's just zoom in and look at some of these Creobroters. So these are, you know, males. They're not identified. You can see that they have pinkish at the base of the hind wings here. These are female. No, sorry, that's still a male. Those are some females there. You can see these males have like that smoky patch that could indicate a couple of different species. Here's a no, that's still a male. Wow, that is a really wide forewing if that's a male. Let's keep looking at these specimens, see if there's anything that jumps out at us. These are all Malaysian Creobroter. You can see that some have more parallel arching on their hind wings than others. These are the Oatheke. That says Creobroter pictopenis, but I'm not convinced. I'm not seeing, I mean, I don't know if that's the mommy, but I'm not seeing green on any hind wings here. Let's see. Next image, here we go. More pictures here. Nepal and Pakistan. That looks a lot, that says Urbanus, but I'm not sure on that one. And the picture's too greeny to really know. I think Dramatis lives in these areas, so it could be Dramatis. Apicalis, that's allegedly Dramatis. Although, it's hard to tell. I mean, these pictures aren't the best, so it is kind of hard to really see. I'm not seeing pronounced spines on those forecoxa, though, which that one has some pronounced spines on the forecoxa. So I don't know if that's actually legitimately Dramatis. Look at that. That's a female that's got no markings on her. That could be the Celebensis or Sumatranus. That looks like Sumatranus or Celebensis right there. That looks like Meleagris right there. You can tell because it's got that band across the pronotum, and it's got the smoky patch there. Philippines. That looks like Celebensis, although it looks, I'm not entirely sure. Thailand. No, these aren't all identified as species. That's allegedly Pictopenis right here, but the male doesn't have the smoky patch on his hind wing like the description says. That's a pretty good shot of something that's got its hind wings open. It definitely wouldn't be something like Fusca areatus or anything like that, but I'm not entirely sure what that would be. There's a hind wing that's devoid of color, so there are a couple of things where the males have a hind wing devoid of color, but also remember that some of these things aren't described from the males and females. Some of them are described from one sex or the other. And because of that, it can be very difficult to really know what you're working with. That looks like a nymph. That says elongata. I mean, it's possible elongata is not actually a synonym of apicalis, because that doesn't look like apicalis to me. Let's look at some of these. There was a museum that had a collection of a bunch of Creobroter, and they were very kind in emailing me images of their collections. Oh, there's no head on that one. I just want to find a picture of a female Pictopenis labeled specimen. But you can see there's so much variation. Like, that has a lot of color on the hind wing. This guy up here, but then this guy doesn't have any color on the hind wing. And whether or not these are all diagnostic features, I don't really know. It's hard to actually know. Now, my question: these two specimens are both labeled as female elongata, but like, could that be what they mean by like the green on the base of the Pictopenis wing? I mean, I know it looks more like a yellowy orange or clear right now, but like maybe it faded. I mean, I just don't know. Nope. So let's see. That's Telebensis, that's Episcopalis, that's Fasciatus, that's Gemmatus, just some. Let's see what other stuff I have in this folder. This is allegedly a pair of Creobroter Pictopenis. You can see this monkey patch, but, you know, like, that's not a good quality image, so it's hard to really tell what we're looking at here. So anyway, the reason why I'm worried about this, couple of things. So, you know, you're trying to breed your Creobroter, and if it's a mislabeled stock, you're going to get some problems. And it can be hard to track down stock. Like, if person A sells a bunch of Creobroter nymphs to people B through L, and then, you know, maybe person L sells nymphs of, you know, the next generation to person, you know, X and Y, people X and Y. And, you know, are people X and Y going to know that person A was the originator of that stock? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. And so that can cause some problems. And the reason that's going to cause some problems is because if, you know, people are mislabeling some of these things, and the mislabeled specimens are labeled as the same species, but they come from different, like, original sources, you're going to have a problem. Like the apicalis specimen that I have, somebody was sent the ootheca of her grandparents, and it was labeled as Gemmatus. And as I was reading them, I'm like, this doesn't look like Gemmatus at all. And, you know, I don't think it's Gemmatus. And so that mislabeled Gemmatus is going to be, you know, that mislabeled thing that's not Gemmatus, that's called Gemmatus, it's going to be different than something else that's not Gemmatus but called Gemmatus. And so when you try to pair them with each other, you know, before I knew the differences between Urbanus and Gemmatus, I would, you know, I lost a line of one of these guys because I bred them with Creobroter that were labeled as Gemmatus from someone else, and they were all infertile after that. And I suspect that there was a great deal of, you know, maybe those two species weren't the same, and so there was some incompatibility. wherein one one or both may not have actually been Germanis. And so that's going to present some problems. And that's why it's important to kind of know how to figure out which Creobroter species you're working with. And the whole genus is a taxonomic train wreck because not only, are most people not going to be able to really figure out what species they're dealing with, they're just going to take the seller's word for it. We don't know necessarily if there are other Creobroter species. Oh man, that are out there. And somebody told me that, the Plica prima venation may not be a good, reliable character because of inherent variability that could exist anyway. So are Germanus and Urbanus separate species? And if so, how do we know? And if not, how do we know? And it's a real problem. The only real solution is going to be to, do your best to maintain, a stock where you're not having to rely on outside sources to continue breeding. So, being careful not to lose all your males or females. And of course, it's not always feasible. Things happen along the way. And so, this is why we can't have nice things. Creobroter can be a tricky thing as far as knowing which species you're dealing with, because there are at least 20 species. I would actually venture to say that there are probably at least twice that number that we have described. And again, I don't know what kinds of variations occur. So, is it justified to consider Elongata and Apicalis the same or different? We don't know. I mean, some people have said, no, it's not a justified synonymy. So maybe it's not a justified synonymy. And so, I'm not entirely sure. So now we're going to transition a little bit. So I've talked a little bit about the inherent issues with Creobroter species identification and things like that. Why we have problems. And so in summary, just as a summary for people, in case I've lost you, the descriptions of the Creobroter species are very old, very inconsistent. So there are descriptions that describe in great detail all sorts of features that other descriptions don't consider. And there are issues because the females of some species and the males of other species aren't known. So when you know the species only from one sex, you have a big problem, especially since this is a sexually dimorphic genus. So there are some issues with Creobroter taxonomy. I'm yawning, I'm tired, but I'll be okay. So that is that's an issue. So now let's talk about caring for them and just some of the general husbandry notes. Creobroter is a fairly easy beginner group to work with, aside from the taxonomic issues that we have as far as determining exactly what species is what. And, I don't want to go full nihilist and say, well, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. If somebody, gets mismatched Creobroter and breeds them together and, they lose them to sterility, it's not the end of the world. Well, yes, it is. Yes and no. No, because you could probably get new stock, but at the same time, there's something to be said about the ability to keep a colony or a line of something going for many generations. And we'll have a separate podcast episode where I talk about inbreeding and how much of a problem it actually is. But that's not this episode. And I promise, when I make an inbreeding episode, I'll add the link to that to the description of this episode. Okay? But we're going to talk about, so it's not good or bad. It's bad because, the person's lost their stock and they, might be left wondering what went wrong. And also it can, just cause some issues with just the appreciation of the genus and, our understanding of how speciation and hybridization works. And, I kind of have a concept that, like everything else in biology, there's a gradient where, like, speciation isn't as complete or discrete as we might have originally thought. So, there might be some subpopulations of one Creobroter that can actually interbreed with a different species, whereas other subpopulations in different geographic areas may not be able to, and things like that. And people don't always keep the most careful records of where stock originates from anyway, especially after several generations when, like, it changes hands, 85 times, and then somebody offers up, a fresh group of young nymphs for sale, and they're just like, yeah, I got this, and they don't always know its origins. And, it's hard because sometimes I will sell people things, and they'll be like, so where'd you get these from? And I don't always know. Like with the Creobroter apicalis, right now, I think I'm the only one in the US offering apicalis at all. And so if I sell apicalis nymphs to somebody in the next generation, they're selling apicalis nymphs, and then I'm also selling apicalis nymphs, and I sell person C apicalis nymphs, and then person C says, hey, person B is selling apicalis nymphs too, and it's like, yeah, I probably sold person B at some point those apicalis, and so they originally did come from me, even though you're going to buy them from a different person. And so it could be kind of tricky. And the reason why I'm bringing all this up is that you have a just, and I don't want to say that, I don't want to disparage anybody, but people don't always keep careful records when they don't think it's important. And it can be hard because sometimes we don't realize how important a record is until we learn something else about, like, hey guys, maybe the Creobroter that all originated from here, even though we call them one thing, could actually be a new species, blah, blah, blah. And so, sometimes record keeping is very important, but not everybody understands that. And, even mundane things like, like, when did this molt to the final, when did this mantis molt to adulthood? Well, I don't remember. I have stickers on my mantis cups that say, like, the final molt date, and I write the final molt date on those stickers once the mantis has its final molt. And that's helpful because I can then figure out, like, okay, when do I need to start feeding this mantis? When should I try to breed this mantis? Things like that. So anyway, Creobroter. Really easy genus to rear. There are people that don't want them as a species, especially a beginner species, because they're put off by the small size. There are people that want to have big honking mantis, and, that's their prerogative. They're not welcome here. I'm just kidding. But the thing about Creobroter is they do make wonderful beginner mantises because they're pretty forgiving. They do fine at room temperature, even though it's a tropical genus, and that can't be said for every mantis. Maybe I'll have an episode where I talk about heterochadia and how, like, infection prone they are, and how there's a problem with heterochadia orientalis being an African species, even though it's called heterochadia orientalis. I don't know why that happened. Anyway, Creobroter don't need a whole lot of heat. They don't need a whole lot of water. They do like to drink. They don't need it overly humid, though. They do fine in, like, the 24-ounce or 32-ounce deli cups for their, whole lives. They're small. They can molt to adulthood just fine in the 32-ounce deli cups. The nymphs, when they're young, aren't particularly cannibalistic in many species. They are vicious feeders. They will attack prey that's much larger than their body. I've seen it many times, and it's really cool. They really like to eat, pretty massive meals, and they're good eaters. They can grow up pretty quickly, especially at higher temperatures. And care is pretty easy for them. I keep them at, just normal room temperature. They're in a grow tent, so it's probably a little higher than room temperature because when the lights are on in the grow tent, they heat up a little bit. I don't know if I have talked about, like, why light is important for, animals to have a regular light cycle, but that could be a different episode. They, are misted every other day. They're fed a wide variety of prey items. Some mantises are picky eaters and will only attack flying prey. these guys will attack basically anything you throw at them. They like roaches and crickets and moths and flies and each other and things like that. And so they'll eat a wide array of different prey items, and you should be giving them a varied diet. Varied diets are very important for the health of a lot of carnivorous animals, especially generals, predatory insects. And we can get into that in another episode. They can take, 2.5 to 4 months to reach maturity. The females have an extra molt, but they mature and are ready to mate pretty quickly after they become adults, so it's not an issue. You don't need to worry about slowing the males down or anything like that. You don't have to worry about speeding the females up. Just let them grow. They'll become adults. Females take a little bit longer than the males, but the males will still be around to mate with the females. Mating them isn't all that difficult. What I found when I was young was I was rearing them, and when I reared the nymphs only on crickets, when they became adults, the females were really, really aggressive towards those males when it came time for mating. But when I rear them on a varied diet that incorporates flies and moths and roaches and crickets and things like that, they do just fine. They aren't really susceptible to the issues associated with feeding mantises, black soldier flies that people complain about. I will talk about that in a different episode, and maybe that would be a good point of discussion. But they are a really all-around good mantis species to have. I've reared them since I was in middle school. A lot of things labeled as Germanis may or may not be Germanis. I don't really know. If I can find some of the old childhood specimens of mine, I don't know what they're at, but maybe I still have them somewhere. I can use my jeweler's loop that I always seem to lose to try and figure out if it is actually Germanis. And so that is just kind of a lowdown on the genus Creobroter. After mating, the females will lay multiple oothecae that are like, they kind of look like mini baguettes. It's really cool. The incubation is 6 to 9 weeks usually, and you get anywhere from 30 to 90 babies depending on the size of the ootheca. Most of them can handle hydei right away. Really easy, fun species to work with. So, that's the Creobroter. This has been Rearing Rambles, Episode 2, Creobroter & Co. I'm your host, Alex Baranowski, and have a good day. Oops.